This video tutorial talks about vector data model. In this video tutorial, the description of vector data model is covered. Then the three types of vector features are described with some examples at the end. So in a vector data model, the real world is represented by vectors, that is directed line segments. So in case of a vector, it has a starting coordinate, for example x1 and y1, and an ending coordinate x2 and y2. And for a vector, the direction implies order. For example, in this case, the vector is pointed from A to B. And so in vector data model, we describe the real world entities by marking points and connecting those points with vectors. So in particular, the vector data model has its geometrical aspects where the geometrical information of the real world is represented using vectors. For example, if we have a rectangular parcel boundary in a city, then we know that a rectangle can be represented by 4 vertices or 4 points connected to each other in such a way that they form a rectangle. And so we get 4 vectors that are forming this particular rectangular entity on the ground. Similarly, if we have a curve on the road, then that curve can be represented by many vectors connected back to back with each other. And if it's a feature such as a water hydrant on the ground, which does not have any length dimension, then we can think of this as a vector with 0 length. That is, the starting point of the vector and ending point of the vector are the same. So based upon the description and representation of real world with vectors, we can have 3 types of vector features: a point, a polyline or line, and a polygon or area. In case of point, it is a vector of 0 length. So starting point of the vector and ending point of the vector are identical or equivalent. In case of polyline, many points are connected to each other with vectors. So we have a starting vertex and an ending vertex with several intermediate vertices. And since in case of vectors the order or direction matters, we go from starting, traversing through the intermediate vertices to all the way to the ending vertex, and it forms a polyline. This is a second type of vector feature. And the third type of vector feature, which is a polygon, is potentially a polyline where the starting vertex and ending vertex are the same, or it forms a closed curve or closed polyline. And so these 3 features can be, or vectors types can be used to represent real world features. For example, if we have an area of a city where we have buildings and streets and there are people in the city, we can use the 3 types of vector features to represent various aspects of that city. For example, streets can be represented with a layer of polylines. Likewise, buildings can be represented with a layer of polygons. And the people or customers, in this case, for example, can be represented by a layer of points. Likewise, many other real-world entities can be represented with these 3 features. For example, water hydrant, stream gauge, accident locations would be points. Streets, rivers, track of a hurricane would be a polyline. campus boundary, building footprint, and lakeshore line would be, or a lake boundary would be a polygon.